Stealthing. It's a relatively new term for an increasingly common breach of trust, the non-consensual removal of a condom during intercourse.
Well, I think it's worse than bad. It's repugnant, actually. I think it's the ultimate act of betrayal. It can have really devastating consequences.
A 2018 study of sexual health clinic patients found that 1 in 5 same-sex attracted men and 1 in 3 women have been stealthed. Of those, only 60% actually considered it sexual assault and just 1% went to the police.
I've had a lot of dealings with people who have been victims of pretty serious crimes. What bothered me the most was there was this perception that stealthing was somehow a less serious offence. And this sort of led to a lot of confusion on top of the shame and guilt that victim survivors often feel anyway.
A 2019 study found that perpetrators were motivated by pleasure, the thrill of degradation, even a perceived right to spread their seed. The common theme? Total disregard for the rights of their intimate partner.
This is a very serious offence and it needs to be taken seriously so that members of the public understand that this falls outside what is acceptable conduct.
ACT, Tasmania, New South Wales and Victoria all recently introduced anti-stealthing legislation, and South Australia's new laws are set to become the toughest in the land, carrying a maximum sentence of life in prison.
We've done nothing to actually increase the penalties. Rape already carries a maximum life imprisonment term. But what we've done is identify stealthing as an issue that is so important that it deserves and warrants to be listed as one of the factors that negates consent.
But to date, no stealthing conviction has actually been recorded in Australia. And while consent campaigners continue to call for nationally consistent laws, laws alone won't address the issue.
One of the biggest limitations is actually reporting rates and then evidentiary proof. But having different jurisdictions in Australia change those laws is a very, very good start.
Chanel Contos is a consent campaigner. She's been heavily involved with the South Australian law and she joins us now. Chanel, congratulations on getting this through. Just explain to us why you think these laws are so important.
Thank you so much. So these laws are important for a few reasons. First of all, in this case, we can use legislation to really set community standards about what is acceptable as a society and what isn't, especially in terms of consent and respect. And this form of education can be really preventative. And then, of course, if all else fails and someone does experience stealthing and they are a victim of stealthing, these laws are then there to protect them. It means that they know that the court system is there to validate them in what's happened to them is wrong and to support them through the process.
So, Chanel, what impact can this act have on upon victims?
Victims of stealthing can experience a range of different impacts. So the physical ones, and the ones that tend to come to mind to people, are things like unwanted STI transmission or risk of unwanted pregnancy. But there are also psychological impacts of this. There's trauma involved in this, mental health implications, and from speaking to many survivors of these acts, it feels as though, again, because all of those barriers that exist in the world to understanding the process of sexual assault and reporting are only heightened in this way because the perpetrator is someone who is, must by definition be close to you or someone that you trusted for a moment. It can mean those psychological impacts are much greater because there's not much understanding about what's actually happened and what to do next.
Chanel, as we know, sexual crimes are so hard to successfully prosecute against. Even with this legislation, it seems like this would be even harder. Do stealthing victims really stand a chance of being able to achieve a conviction?
Look, around the world, there are very few instances of when someone has been prosecuted for stealthing. However, what is most important in this space is, again, the preventative nature, the education, the saying that as a society, not just in South Australia, but this sends a message to the whole of Australia that this behaviour is absolutely not on. And what we need next is unified stealthing laws around the country. We now have 5 jurisdictions in Australia where stealthing is explicitly criminalised, and we have 3 more to go. That's Queensland, Northern Territory and WA. And it's really important that this occurs as soon as possible because we are one country, people travel between states and territories all the time.
So is it fair to say that this legislation is as much about the conversation we're having now, the message it's sending to potential future perpetrators, as it is about the actual laws and convictions?
Like 100%. A lot more people are going to be watching this program right now than the amount of people who are going to read, I don't know, like the legislative book in South Australia or like whatever that's in. It's the media conversations around it, public awareness, education in schools, education in the community, you know, attaching this along to sex ed when you learn, you know, pretty much every school learns how to put on a condom, but, you know, adding along that messaging of the fact that it cannot be removed without consent. It's not about the jailing sentence for it. I mean, if every single person in Australia who had ever stealthed someone before was like suddenly in jail, we would have seriously like large societal issues. It is about preventing it through education.
Chanel, thank you so much for speaking to us, and we'll see if more dominoes fall.
I hope so. Thanks so much.
The work there that has been done is just remarkable. I think 10, even 5 years ago, if this was something that happened to you, there was no vocabulary by which you could describe it. And when there's not a vocabulary, how do you even understand, you know,
that it even exists?
That it even exists, exactly right. And I think that the way that that is going to deter future perpetrators and put a real framework around why it's wrong and how it's wrong and empower victims in that way is such a productive move.
And the sex ed bit I hadn't really thought about, but you can see what influence that might have. If you find yourself in need of support, by the way, there is national 24-hour counselling and a helpline which is available at 1800-RESPECT, so that's 1800 737 732.